It's Friday, it's not even Friday, it's Thursday morning. It's just gone 9 o'clock, so it can only be Coffee Kickstarter. And we're the Property Angels. And Property Angels was founded by a former solicitor, a former accountant, and former police detective who saw the need to professionalise the industry. Using their knowledge, experience, and proven track record, they endeavour to guide and support those new to the property, providing practical knowledge, skills, and the tool set to enable them to thrive and achieve their potential in a safer manner. Property Angels Coffee Kickstarter series aims to inspire those both new and already on their journey by sharing real life roadmaps from coal-faced practitioners actually walking that talk rather than just talking about it. And today we're delighted to have with us Jane, but before we get to Jane, we'd first like to introduce ourselves. So starting with Sam, would you like to say a few words?
Thanks, Karen. So my name is Sam Beddoe. I have a couple of property companies. I have one in service accommodation, and my main property business is Revive Holdings, and that's a development company. Prior to becoming full-time in property, I was a detective in the police force for 23 years, dealing with major crime, serious organised crime, so quite a different way of life to property now. Property business I have now. So I've got experience in buy-to-lets, HMOs, refurbs, title splits, buying at auction, working with SaaS pension money, working with joint venture partners and investors, commercial conversions, as I say, service accommodation. So a bit of a variety there. And as I say, my main focus is now in development. So that's a little bit about me.
Brilliant, thank you. And Sarah?
Hi guys, thanks for joining us this morning. My name is Sarah Smith. I bought my first property in 2004, just to live in, not as an investment. And then each time I wanted to move properties to live in, which was roughly every 2 years, my broker advised me, you can keep the previous one, let it out, and still afford to buy the next one. So I did that 4 times, very slowly. And I had 4 properties, and I thought, this property thing is something I should probably put a bit more effort into. At the time I was working as a solicitor in London. I carried on doing that whilst I continued to build my portfolio a bit more quickly, excuse me, and continued to do that until my property income exceeded what I was making from my job. So in 2016 I left being a solicitor, I left my job completely and went full-time property. Since then I've done lots of different bits and pieces, similar to Sam. So I have done rent to rent a long time ago. My initial portfolio was made up of single lets that then changed to HMOs, but I'm focusing now more on very simple vanilla buy-to-lets, buy, refurb, refinance. I've kind of come back to that. Also done title splits, auction purchases, lots of bits and pieces, and also host PIP Southampton with Karen and Sam here.
Brilliant, thank you, Sarah. And just a little about me before we get on to Jane. So I originally qualified as an accountant. Well, somebody has to, right? And it was a case of, should I be an accountant or should I be a barrister? Well, I went down the wrong path when I found out about wealth dynamics, but I did pretty well at it. Then moved into project and program management and business consultancy in big blue chip industry. I've done some mentoring of project managers. I've done a bit of public speaking, but I finally escaped that world in May 2015, and taking the skills and knowledge I'd learned during my tenure, I started to build a sustainable property business on solid foundations. And now, as well as continuing to grow my business, I have other professionals craft strategic plans and get the business side right, so they start from the right position. Anyway, that's enough to me. Let's welcome our lovely guest, Jane Bayler. Jane, we are absolutely delighted to have you with us today. So tell us a bit about yourself and why you exited a really great corporate career at a senior level and started your own business.
Yeah, that was a journey. So I mean, my corporate career lasted for a long time. It was around 20 years. And I was working in media and entertainment in London, for people that don't know. So I worked for television companies, advertising agencies. I was managing multi-million-pound accounts. And it was, in some respects, it was an absolutely fantastic career, particularly for a young person, because it was terribly exciting. It was very glamorous. There was a lot of travel involved. I was staying in 5-star hotels, flying around the world a lot. You know, in some respects, people could say, oh, you're living the dream, Jane, which was fine until I had children. And then the dream turned to a nightmare. Because, of course, I was working insane hours, and that was expected. And at that particular time, and I'm sure it's probably no different now, there was no expectation that you would do anything different. In fact, I do see my daughter, and I won't talk about her at length, but I do see her working in exactly the same way as I used to work, and she's working in brand marketing as well. So that happened. And then I was headhunted by the owner of a relatively successful, I would say formally successful design agency. They did corporate identity, and they'd fallen on hard times because he'd had a big bust up with his partner who'd run off to New York, and he'd really taken his eye off the ball, and the business was struggling. So he brought me in and said, can you run this business? And it had a great creative heritage, but it was chaotic. So I just came in and I just used the skills that I'd learned in corporate. We turned the business around. We grew the turnover from 1 to 6 million really quickly, quadrupled profits, and then sold it to a US communications group. So at that point, I technically was supposed to stay on for an earn-out, but I managed to. Yeah, so that was it really. That was my get out. Yeah.
And that you left, really. One moment you had this big corporate career, and suddenly you're out there. You need to start crafting your own business. So
Indeed.
let's start with property, because that's how we originally met. And you were investing up north at the time, but since then you've done quite a bit in property and are currently offering a consultant and investment service. But let's talk about your journey, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and how it started for you in property. So starting from up north.
Yes, well, property isn't my main business, but the first thing that I did, I guess, because when we met through Progressive Property, that was how we all got to know one another. And I noticed that the area that I was living in, I'd already been going to meetings down here, and I knew a lot of investors down south. And I live at the moment I live in South Hertfordshire, but I live in South Buckinghamshire. And it's a very, very high value area. It's the demand usually outstrips the supply. So I noticed that people that were living in other parts of the country were achieving much better yields and were much more able to get going in their property journey. So I decided to learn about this. So I teamed up with this guy called Jane Bayler, who you probably know about, and I started organizing investor tours up to Oldham and looking at his HMOs up there. And so that was really where I started. And then I got kind of passionate about property in the north. And in fact, I'm still working with another guy called Leo Suarez, and he's actually got HMOs up in Liverpool, so he's still doing the same thing. So my niche really, it became very apparent right from the beginning that I was somebody who needed to work with investors, because that was really my background. It was high level relationship management. So right now, I approach property more from a business perspective, and my clients tend to be they will be high net worth investors in property. As I said, property isn't my only business, but in property, partly to do with my proximity to London in this particular area. And I think we're all tend to be pragmatic in that respect, particularly as women. We don't want to be rushing all around the country the whole time. So how can I make this area work for me? Well, this is an area that's full of high net worth investors. I'm very, very close to London. It's easy for me to hop on the train, go into Mayfair. So I wouldn't say that I work with many people. I'm very selective because, like probably some other people who are watching, or maybe you as well, I've had some bad experiences. And so I'm very, very, very careful about who I work with. And that is my absolute number one rule in property. If I don't like somebody, if their values don't resonate with me, I just walk away, and I don't care how much money they've got. I just don't want to know. So that's me.
No, that is a really sensible approach. And I think, you know, we can all relate to that. We've all been there at differing, you know, times of our kind of career. And our industry sadly does have a number of sharks out there who talk a very good talk. They're very salesy, and they hook people in using NLP techniques. So no, it's a really good warning. So we'll get onto your other businesses in a minute, because I know you've got lots of other exciting things going on, but do you still have a passion for property? And I know it's a sideline now, but do you still have a passion for it, or is it just another income stream for you?
It's mostly just another income stream for me, because what I'm really, really passionate about is my marketing business. But property, once you discover it, you realize that it can be life-changing, of course. And I don't think I will ever leave it behind. I just never will, because why would you? And as I said, I haven't done what you've done and built portfolios, but I think once you start to understand the potential of property, there are certainly, it's very exciting. I really like development. I work with developers, and I get very excited by that, because, you know, in a way, what could be more exciting than providing quality homes for people? And there are certainly, you know, plenty of people who provide very poor quality homes and poor quality experiences for people in this country. So I love to be able to support people who are doing it right. And I think that's plenty of people that I have met on the journey are very passionately committed to that. And I think that is a wonderful, wonderful goal, apart from obviously the fact that it is quite a lucrative profession as well. So yeah, I guess the answer is yes.
Yeah, it's about doing it right, and doing it from kind of like a good place, and actually being transparent on what you're doing, because too many developers out there, they massage their GDV. They're almost on Ponzi level, a number of large ones that we all know. And it's about warning people new to the industry to actually do their proper due diligence and talk to other people that have worked with these people, so they get a real story on where to start, right?
Yes, I think the thing about development, I actually was a development investor myself. I was probably in and out of about 4 projects. So what I learned, my God, it was a roller coaster ride, shall we say?
Yes, but without naming names, I am aware of one that didn't go very nicely for you.
Yes, indeed. So all I can say is that I now believe that development investing is definitely, it is not for people who don't understand development. At least it's for 2 types of people. If you're going to go into it on the basis that I did, which is very high risk second charge investing, then you have to, well, be nuts actually, really. I don't think that is, unless there is complete transparency and you're working with somebody who you really know. In other words, they are a genuine business partner. I mean, that's different. If you've gone into business with them and you have complete transparency, and they're very, very good on the numbers, and you can just go straight into Dropbox and see where you are at any given time, and you've got all that history, that's all good. But now, if investors were to come to me and say, should I invest in this project? I would just say to them, the security is more important than the return, for starters, and make sure that you are going to get your capital back. And that's important. Now, the high risk investing, even very, very wealthy investors. Even high nets, they don't really like to take risk. In fact, sometimes they tend to be even more risk averse than people with a lot less money. And I'm sure you've found that as well. But they are more acclimatized to risk, and they do understand that risk and reward comes in equal measure. So it's interesting. It's been great actually to really learn about working with investors and how to see, well, as I say, I've been an investor myself, so I think when you've actually sat in those shoes, then you do see it differently. But it has been very, very interesting.
Now, you've made some really good points there, which hopefully everyone listening in picked up on, which is about, you know, it's not all about the return, it's about the security you have. And it's about actually looking at the gearing on the project, making sure your money's secure and that you're going to get it back, because too many people offer amazing returns, which entices people in. And then it just doesn't come to fruition. So I know you've got a number of other exciting ventures that help people, startups, and that includes property people. The problem we have with our industry is too many people don't like the boring business stuff as they see it. They want to jump in and start without actually starting from the right place. And one of the things you've got is the smart connector. So what seeded that idea and how did it end up being the shape it is?
So the smart connector, I do like making up names. It's one of my hobbies. So I've had a few kind of interesting, businesses with interesting names over the years. But the smart connector really came to me. The concept was actually very personally driven. So I'd had some very, very difficult circumstances in my own life in the lead up to the creation of that business, and one of the things was that my husband had an affair overnight and just ran away, like literally overnight, which was a bit of a shock to the system. So that was like, how on earth did that happen? You put your faith and trust in somebody and then you just don't know them at all. And I think something like that is a big shock, and it makes you reevaluate everything. And that also coincided with a very bad experience that I'd had with some people that I got into business with in property. And I just realized that when I really dug deep, that I had been operating, if you like, with a faulty setting for many, many years. And I traced it back and I realized that it came from my childhood. I'm not going to go into that in great detail here. But fundamentally, it was actually disrespecting connection. So I grew up with the idea that I was the only person that could make a difference to myself, that I had to do it all for myself, and that nobody else was going to do it for me. That was the faulty mindset that had driven me through life. And at times that has served me because it had made me very reliant, very independent, very driven. And of course, I had results, as you probably heard earlier. But what had happened is that through disrespecting the impact and the power of interpersonal connection, shall we say, because we are all connected, we are all one, I had actually fallen into these relationships with people who were exploitative. And that goes for really my husband. And I feel kind of, even now, I feel a little bit bad about saying that because obviously, we've got children and all the rest of it, but it was the truth. And also these business partners. And so I got really, really passionate about connection as a subject. How do we really understand people? How do we prevent ourselves? How do I prevent myself from falling into that trap again? And how do I take that message out to the world that, look, there are two types of people in this world. There are people who are motivated by power, and there are people who are motivated by people and collaboration. And actually, there is no middle ground. You're either one or the other. And some of these people that are motivated by power, they're also, power is money. So, money is usually their blunt instrument, if you like. These people, they are present in property in droves because property is largely an unregulated industry. So how do you actually protect yourself from those people, other than, as you often talk about the due diligence side of things, which is important. So that was really the birth of the Smart Connector, and then it's evolved since then.
Yeah, no, that's really great. And it's, I guess, and something you said earlier, understanding your values and making sure the connections you make are the right connections for you so that you do get that synergy. And you've also got a podcast.
Mm.
So tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, well, I started off by writing a book, and actually the book, when I thought about it, and I actually talked to Rob Moore because I joined his marketing mastermind because I knew that I wanted to build a brand. So I said to him, you know, what should I do? What should I call this book? And he gave me some advice. I didn't really follow his advice 100%, but anyway, obviously he had a podcast. So when I joined the marketing mastermind, I just a lot of other people were doing podcasts as well. And I thought, oh, podcasts, that would be a good thing to do. So to be honest, I just fell into what other people were doing, and I didn't really think it through. I just thought, oh, a podcast is a good way to get your message across. But having done it, I realized the power of it, and it's also a lot of fun. Right at the moment, because I'm putting together some other intellectual property, shall we say, most of the time the podcast is just interviews with people. But the thing that I find so powerful is that it is very synergistic. So you make great new connections through it. You can reach out to people. You can reach out to people that are interesting and that you personally want to get to know better. So it's very powerful from that respect. You can learn from them. And then, of course, you can then bring their lessons to your listeners. So I'm a great fan of podcasting. I really love it. And I would recommend it to anybody. But the caveat is that it takes time and money. So you have to be prepared to put in the commitment. There's no point in starting it and doing a few episodes and then saying this isn't for me. It has to be thought through.
And you have to keep pushing forward, as you say. Now, linked to all of this, of course, you've got a couple of London events that you run. You've got your Love the Mojo event, which is personal leadership, empowerment and mindset. And you've got your Pocket MBA, and that's around business scaling up. Can you share a bit more about these events and typically who they're for?
Mm-hmm. Well, the Love the Mojo, I'm actually not doing any of those events at the moment because obviously, you know, nobody's doing events, are they, right now? So yeah, so Love the Mojo was the first London event that I did, and I was fortunate to have been offered a space by WeWork for free. So they kind of got behind it. They said, I really, really like what, you know, the concept of this. And of course, Love the Mojo, it was mostly about mindset. It was all about entrepreneurship because that's a subject that I'm passionate about. But it was really a mindset event. So had a very small audience, but it didn't really matter because I didn't have to pay for the venue. I didn't make any money from it at all. Just turned up and got my neighbor involved and her son, and we all turned up, you know, and the crew, and it was yeah, just a kind of experiment, I'd say, because that was the first time that I'd done something like that, and I just wanted to do something a little bit different.
It's about enjoying it, isn't it? You know, you've got to be enjoying it, and mindset is one of the key components. You might have the knowledge, but if you don't have the right mindset, you're not going to take the action.
No. And we had some great speakers. We had a lot of laughs. The nice thing about WeWork is that they had, you know, beer and wine on tap. Can you believe it? You just so literally people could just turn up, you know, help themselves to a beer and sit down, and it was all very relaxed and really fun. So I really enjoyed that, but it did come to an end because then I think word got out that WeWork were sponsoring these entrepreneurs who wanted to put on these events, and then it became very difficult to get a regular slot. And of course, as you probably know, with meetings, you do need to have that consistency. Yeah. So I kind of gave up doing that. And then the Pocket MBA, that was just, again, something that I love to support entrepreneurs because I think in the beginning, people get so bewildered, don't they? They just get so lost, particularly if they have come out of a corporate background where all of a sudden they've got no support. They've had all that support. They've had people that they can delegate anything to. I mean, it was a big shock for me, because literally I was sitting on top of this business, and all I had to do was just, you do this, you do that, and you do that, and I'll go off and just, talk to the clients. And then, like, suddenly, if you've come out of that environment, and most people in my circle had, because those are the kind of people that I tended to attract, then you're totally at sea, and it's just like, oh my God, how do I build the team with no money and no business? How on earth do I do it without driving myself into the ground and completely mad in the process? And it's very, very hard, and hats off to anybody that even attempts it.
No, it is
So,
tough. I can
so
resonate with that quite a lot.
exactly. So the Pocket MBA was just bringing together some of my contacts and just giving them the opportunity to, just inspire entrepreneurs too.
No,
Mixture from property and business.
that's really great. And I did follow some of the stuff you were doing on that, and it looked really good. It just time-wise didn't align with other stuff I had going on. But no, that's really excellent. Now, we talked about COVID, and that's impacted everyone. But has it thrown up any opportunities for you that might otherwise not have arisen? And if so, what were they, and how did they pan out?
Indeed. So I was in the process of moving my business online anyway. And actually, I've been on a very interesting journey over this period, because I've learned, and this is a journey that I started last year, all about online course creation. And that has been very, very interesting, because it's something that it's a whole skill and an skill set, I would say, and an art and a business skill set, and a technical skill set, and a marketing skill set, all in itself. And just like property, it's very, very easy to get it wrong and to make no money at all. But if you get it right, and I haven't actually, I've launched one of the products, but I haven't done the full launch yet. And the reason for that is because I know that you can either get it, as I said, you can either get it right, or you can get it very wrong. And I'm kind of on a crusade and a mission to really get right to the heart of what it is that is going to, make these courses kind of fly. And I think I'm getting there. And some of the lessons that I've learned are going to be very, very valuable. And in fact, I'm wrapping them into the course. It's not a course for course creators. It's a course it's called The Leader They Love. So it's about becoming the person that your ideal clients, investors, or business partners choose first. Now, that in itself is a lot to do with marketing. So yeah, it's really a sort of very much a marketing thing.
No, that's great. And I know you've got quite a large following now in your group, which is really good. It's growing all the time. So that will help it, no doubt. So question for you, given all you've got going on and all the various businesses you're trying to run, what does a typical day look like for you, if there is such a thing?
Yeah, so it's I kind of work on the 80-20 principles. So really, the property work is 20% of what I do. So I kind of do track and monitor my time, and because I'm mostly just putting people together with other people, obviously have some Zoom calls and conversations. Occasionally, I was in London this week in Mayfair. So occasionally I will go into London, but I try not to do too much of that. So as I said, I'm not poring over spreadsheets, because I'm not very good at that anyway. And I'm not actually doing the work. I'm just connecting people, and that's my little niche. And so right at the moment, that's all I do. So that's my 20%. And then the 80% is really the as I said, the smart connector. So in any given day, sometimes I might have a podcast interview. I might obviously be doing something like this, or I might be interviewing somebody myself. And I will be also looking for guests, although I try to just do that at the weekend. And then I allocate maybe an hour to speak to people who book calls through Calendly, which I always offer people the opportunity to do. And so those would be mostly people that would be inquiring about, my services, and particularly this little marketing automation platform that belongs to my partners, but it's something that I'm helping them, market and get off the ground. So I speak to people about that. And then apart from that, just content creation all the way. Just working on modules, studying as well, because I think we all have to be lifelong learners in business. And so I have to, obviously put some time into that. So it's a mixture really, but mostly content creation and studying.
And that's really interesting. And actually, you made a very valid point. Nobody ever knows everything. And if you just sit back and watch, your business starts to sink. You need to stay abreast of what's going on, continually learning.
Yes.
Then bedding down what you've learned, establishing it, and then taking on board more learnings and growing it from that basis. That's, yeah. So now, this is not necessarily in monetary terms, this next question, but what would you say is your biggest success to date for you, that satisfied you, that's given you the best feeling, where you felt you'd really achieved something that meant something really significant to you?
That's fairly easy to answer, because selling the business was amazing. It was very validating, actually, because it was a real achievement to have grown this business so quickly and exited. And of course, it was rewarding financially. I mean, it wasn't my business, because the business had already been there for 10 years, sadly, because otherwise I would, I'd probably be living in Barbados by now and not working at all. But anyway, but, I had shares in it. That was part of the agreement when I came in. And I exited with some money, and that gave me the time to look after my children when they were small, and actually gave me some breathing space to get my head around the idea of entrepreneurship. And so it was very, very life-changing. It was life-changing for myself and for my family. And I will actually never forget that incredible feeling when, whooshed up in the lift to the top floor of this, fantastic building in the city, and everybody was sitting there with the gold pens and the papers, and it's like, I can't, but this is actually going to happen. This is really going to happen, and my life is going to be so different. Just signed on, and then, in fact, I've got like a shiver going through me as I even think about it, because it was just such a good feeling. It's always great to do a deal that's a really good deal. And I'm sure that you've all had that experience as well. It's a nice feeling, and it gets addictive, doesn't it?
It does. And actually, you made a really good point there. And it's probably something you cover in more depth within your Smart Connector program. But too many people really don't know how they want to exit their business. And then when they decide they do want to exit it, they haven't set it up to allow for that type of exit. So actually, where you're able to sell it and you're able to take the big reward up front because of how you've crafted the business. Mm-hmm. It's so important that you build your business to enable that from early doors, really.
Well, I mean, people do it in different ways. So before I actually joined this business, it was being run as a lifestyle business. And of course, with a lifestyle business, the owners, they run it to support their lifestyle. So they take out as much as they can every single year and leave nothing in. And I certainly knew plenty of people in media in London who ran their business that way, and they take out £1 million every year. And that was very nice. And they didn't really have any intention of selling it. But I think what I said to this guy when I came in is, he said, I want to sell the business. And I said, well, you can't sell the business and take everything out of it. If I'm going to come in and actually work on this business, I'm sorry, but we have to retain and reinvest, and we have to put that money into marketing. And so that was the agreement that we had. And we did some quite bold things given the size of the business that we were. So we were a bit of a minnow compared to some of our competitors. But one of the things that we did was we chartered this yacht in Cannes twice a year at the television festival. And the reason why we did that was because the bosses of the people that would be hiring us would be there and they would see us. And we knew when obviously these corporate identity, large television corporate identity programs were coming up for, a review. So what would happen is they would walk by, they would see all our banners in the yacht and they'd think, wow, they must be doing well. It was very smoke and mirrors. I mean, we were doing okay, but we were a very small company, as I said, compared to some of these other ones. And then when it was all in a way a little bit Machiavellian, and it was smoke and mirrors, but then that is marketing. And so that was very, very powerful. And we did track the results. And funnily enough, from doing something like that, which was an investment that most people would say that was absolutely insane thing to do, for a business of your size, but it wasn't. It actually proved that it worked. And that taught me an important lesson, which is don't follow the herd. Don't do what everybody else is doing. Take the lessons from them, experiment, and then do it your own way. Because
I'm totally with you on that. And actually, something else you said that I'm just going to draw out a little bit, which was when you first came into the business and you were reshaping it. The other thing the business needed to do was not be dependent on what used to be the founders before you became part of the business. Otherwise, that sale wouldn't have gone as smoothly. They would have been tied in for 3 to 5 years. So they were backing it off and making it a proper saleable business that was process driven, where somebody could step in and fill those shoes based on how it was shaped. Yeah, no, I heard you say that, but I just wanted to draw that out as well, because too many people don't realize the importance of not having a given individual being the key focus on the business. So take Progressive, for example. At one point, Rob and Mark were the brand.
Mm-hmm.
And had they tried to sell it at that point, they would have struggled without tying themselves in.
Mm-hmm.
But no, that's brilliant. So I hear people talking about secrets all the time. And you know what? It's never secrets. It's about not having certain knowledge. And basically working with people who have the knowledge you need so that they can knowledge transfer to you and lead you down the right pathway and share the mistakes they've made to protect you. So if somebody came up to you right now and they were new to business and they wanted to start their own business, escape corporate land, what piece of advice would you give them so they started in the right way?
Well, the first thing is you have to keep your expectations low in terms of your earning capacity, for the first 18 months, because all businesses take investment. So where are you going to get the investment from? I mean, that's just like a practical thing. Do you actually have the resources to be able to support yourself for 18 months while you're not making any money? Because in reality, that is people think, it's going to take like 3 to 6 months. And sometimes people will say it's going to take 3 to 6 months, but it can take a lot longer depending on what you're doing. So do you have a bit of a cushion? Because if not, it's probably a good idea for you to find something that is going to make sure that your life isn't kind of completely turned upside down, 6 months down the line. So I think, that's obviously basic advice. And apart from that, I did a post on LinkedIn about this, about a roadmap, is find somebody else who's done exactly what you want to do, but is further down the line. So, don't find somebody who's done a course in what you want to do and is now turning around and saying that they know all about it too. Someone who has walked the walk and talked the talk and got the battle scars and had the, learned through mistakes. Those are the kind of person, those are the kind of people that you should be learning from. And so, you talk about due diligence. So be very, very clear, start with the end in mind, be very purpose driven. This is what I want to do and this is where I want to go. Have a North Star. That's how I like to put it. That's your North Star. Right. Okay. So who else? When you look at that North Star, can you find somebody who has done exactly that, who's been where you are and started from scratch and actually got to there? And those are the people that you need to follow and kind of bring into your life, not somebody who just talks a good game.
That is brilliant. That is exactly what we like to hear, because Coffee Kickstarter is all about real coal-faced practitioners actually doing it, because too many people out there deliver from presentations, but if they're asked to go off piece, they don't have the substance behind them. They're just great presenters, great salespeople, but they haven't ever walked in those shoes and done it. That's really, really good. So what would you say was the best piece of advice you've ever been given that really has stood you in good stead?
Well, there's a quote that I love to come back to, which is my favorite quote, which is always be clear about your purpose or others will use you for theirs. That is my number one quote. And if ever I get confused or I get a bit lost or I think, what am I doing or where should I go from now? I just come back to that. And if you're not clear about your purpose, then you have to be, because otherwise you're just going to be all over the place. So you know, you don't have to have a fully worked up business plan from day one. But what you do need to do is you need to have a vision and you need to know where you're headed and why you're headed there. So I think what tends to happen to a lot of entrepreneurs is people tend to kind of come in from left field. And I find that a lot, because obviously I've got a higher profile now than I've had in the past. So a lot of people come to me and I get phone calls and people book calls and they say, I've got a great business opportunity and you would be the perfect person for this. And I'd love you to come into this business and can you work with us? And, so I do get that a lot. And so I have to say no to people a lot. But, it starts happening very early when you go out there and you network. Is people will see if you have some form of resource, it might be knowledge or skill or money, of course, that you will get approached a lot. And it takes discipline to say no. But the most successful people say no the most. And
I love that. I love that saying, actually, you said. And there was another post you put out about this, just about being being valuable but not accessible.
Available,
yes.
Be valuable, not available, indeed.
Yes.
So I'm full of these little memes. Being valuable, not available. So that, yes, that there's, I would advise anybody to have a disciplined, like a system for their time. So Calendly or Acuity, any of those call booking systems are really good, because you can actually have a slot in the day where you speak to people. So it could be like 2 hours and 8 till 10 or whatever it is. And then people have to book their 15-minute slot with you in that time. And then you're free the rest of the day to go and do your stuff. And of course, if people need to speak longer, then you can, when you're on the phone to them, then you can offer them a different slot. But I love those little 15-minute calls, because you can get an amazing amount achieved. And I do remember, actually, when I worked in TV, it was Greg Dyke, who was the chief executive of ITV at the time. He was famous for only ever having 15-minute meetings standing up. So he would make everybody come into his office for every meeting, and they'd all have to stand in a circle and they'd have 15 minutes for a meeting. And he was famous for that. And I get it, I understand, because, that all that time that you spend on the small talk or the talking about through the possibilities and so on, it's not always productive time. It's just to do with engagement. And of course, we do need to engage, but engagement is different from actually, results orientated business conversations.
No, you are right. I mean, I'm very guilty of allowing people access to me for long periods of time. And it's not that they don't necessarily value what I'm sharing with them. It's just they think they can access me on tap. And so I'm backing off from that quite a lot now. And they do get a 20-minute slot.
Mm.
So no, that's a really, really good piece of advice. So do you have a favorite tool or resource that you use regularly? I'm thinking it might be one of these calendar things you've just mentioned.
Yeah, so my partners have actually got it's a full service digital marketing platform, and it's called Funnel Centric. So I mean, I'm not here to kind of plug it, but you know, I do have access to free trials if anybody did want to have a go at that. And what it is it has every single digital marketing tool within it that you might want, including obviously payment gateways and you know, CRM systems and digital funnel building and membership sites and course creation. It's got everything, anything and everything. And of course the call booking and Facebook pixels, and you know, if you wanted to do all of that. So what they've done is they've dropped in a whole load of templates, so to teach people who subscribe how to do it, use it from a technical perspective, but also from a training perspective. So there's a lot of marketing training that's kind of embedded within that. So I use that. And because I do have a partnership with them, they actually do some of the marketing for me. So I'm quite privileged in that respect, in that I don't have to do everything myself. But that's a pretty good system because it's very integrated. And I started off using lots of different bits of software, and it gets quite expensive actually, and also quite difficult after a while to integrate everything. So it's you know, it's a technical world. I'm not a particularly technical person. I always have to get help because it takes me 10 times as long as it would take somebody who was a more natural mechanic, shall we say, in terms of the wealth dynamic profile. So I think, you know, we all have to recognize our own limitations. And again, it's to do with sort of time efficiency and productivity, in the if we're not working in our zone of genius, shall we say, we do have to pull in other people. And Team Viewer is my secret tool in that respect. I just call up my assistant Dan and say, I can't do this. And he jumps on Team Viewer. And yeah, so I guess that's my secret weapon.
No, that's brilliant. So do you have any specific habits now that you wish you'd had when you first started out?
That's a great question, and thank you for that, Karen. When I think about habits, I think about the habits that I'd like to ditch, like eating too much chocolate. So I've got that habit. Well, I wouldn't say that my lifestyle habits have changed particularly. In terms of my business habits, the main change, and this has been a very, very fundamental one, has been really eradicating the users from my life. So what you know, I'm very, very particular about the people that I work with, as I said, and I tend to, you know, I just tend to kind of put them through sort of filters, various filters. So I'm very open to people, and I think you have to be. Then I think you kind of put them to the test, and you sort of look at how they behave. So are they consistent? Do they do what they say they're going to do when they say they're going to do it? That's a big one. Do they lie about anything? And there are lots of little steps and tests, and a lot of the time people won't even realize, of course they won't realize that they're being put to the test. But I mean, I guess in a way you could say once bitten twice shy, but you don't want to go out there and try to create partnerships with this attitude of suspicion or distrust, because people will pick up on that, and it's not conducive to any form of a good partnership. So you have to be open and collaborative, and actually believe in possibilities, and be very welcoming and encouraging to anybody new that you're thinking of working with. But at the same time, be very, very, very aware of the red flags. And of course that goes in, you know, business as well as life. But when I look back at where I went wrong, and of course I had some painful lessons with these, you know, these people that I got involved with in property, there were definitely red flags in the beginning. And where I went wrong is I believed foolishly what they said to me, because as you said, they were just, you know, good salespeople who were not particularly ethical. And those are the people to watch out for in property. Do not be taken in by a slick, charming sales pitch.
No, that's a really good tip. And unfortunately, when they're given the platform to deliver their message from, that's where people believe that they are the right people because of how they're positioned. Effectively, it's marketing pushing them forward as being the expert when they're not, sadly. But no, that's a really, really good tip. So Sam, have you got some questions for Jane?
Yeah, I was going to ask, you said about you deal a lot with high net worth investors, and they invest in developments. So perhaps anyone listening to this, what would be your advice on how they get to work with investors?
Yeah, well, first of all, Sam, when I heard your background, I thought, wow, you know, you are just that job that you had before probably would have been my dream job, because I am absolutely obsessed with kind of high level corporate crime, because I love to try and work out what motivated those people. So that must have been a really, really fantastic job. So my ears kind of pricked up when you said that. So in terms of working with high net worth investors or ultra high net worths, well, the first thing is that most of the time these people have advisors. So they have investment bankers or people like that who are the people who bring them deals. So I do not necessarily work with these people. I would probably work with their intermediaries in the first instance. So I think it's important to understand that, you know, these people are very carefully protected, because of course a lot of people want their money, a lot of people want to get close to them, and they want to, on the whole, they do not live in the limelight. They want to stay away from publicity. They don't want people knowing they've got a lot of money. They're very private people, and they've usually got trusted advisors who they may have worked with for many, many years, who are managing the money for them. So fairly typically that's what happens. In some instances, they will be very well educated and have MBAs, because of course they, particularly if they have like a family trust and they've actually come into money themselves, then they will generally have had a very good education, and they will have been educated and told that they have to make sure that they don't lose the family's money. So, you know, they have to learn about investment themselves. And so quite often they will be educated up to the nines, MBAs, you know, and it really, really the top, you know, education in the world. So that is not uncommon either. So obviously, in order to get on their radar at all, you have to be 100% professional, of course. You have to know how these people think and work. And, you know, even if you're just dealing, when I say just dealing with their advisors, I mean, their advisors are also extremely educated, smart people. So, you know, we are talking about people who are very sophisticated, and you have to have a sophisticated approach to sophisticated people. So working with those kind of people, it does rule out, you know, some people. And it's because I spent 20 years doing, you know, really working with you know, should we say, very high level people. Then I think in a way I just kind of naturally found that was my sweet spot. And I, you know, I did go to business networking meetings and do the thing about, you know, trying to raise smaller amounts of money from you know, from average people. And it just wasn't my thing. You know, I just thought I'm not really using my strengths and my talents and my history. So so yeah, I would say understand the landscape, and as long as you have a very, very, very good product, if you're in development, obviously, as you are, Sam, and you've got a very, very strong case for it. These kind of people, they are out there, and there's all sorts of things that, and I'm sure that you're aware of this, but they will sometimes, forward fund, they'll often want first charge, they might want to, have the ownership of the asset, so that if things go wrong, then they can just take it back. So they will look for protection, and sometimes they will be overly greedy, has to be said as well. So there are a lot of overly greedy high nets and ultra high nets. And of course, the challenge for developers is actually not to be sacrificed at their altar, because it has to be win-win. And when you've got those people who have the best lawyers, the best advisors, the best solicitors, and they're also very highly educated themselves in terms of how to make money and how not to lose it, sometimes they can believe that you are just the worker, you're just the worker, and they can get rid of you anytime they want. And I've seen that many times over, with some very, very smart people actually get sacrificed, and it's sad, it really is. So I would say everybody has to keep their wits about them in that world.
Excellent, thank you. And you've said that you do get involved in collaboration, but you very carefully pick who you collaborate with. What are the sort of key things for you now? Perhaps if there was like 3 key values, what would they be?
Well, I mean, obviously, reputation and credibility is the first thing that is important, and the ability to prove that. And I think that's always important in any kind of business, and particularly in property. How can you actually prove that you are investable and that you are credible? And also, the other thing is just interesting projects that are manageable, because it's never that easy to fund development. It really isn't, unless you have somebody that you've been working with for a long time. And I know people who have built very, very profitable and successful development businesses over a number of years through just working with 2 investors. So it is not, you don't need a lot of investors, but it is hard to find the right structure, because once you've got a template, like anything in property, it's very template driven, isn't it? That's why, everybody does these kind of repeatable formulas. It's like, oh, that worked. Oh, I'll do another one, and I'll do it in exactly the same way. So it's really no different working with investors. And in the first instance, it's really about finding an investor who you can achieve a business structure with that is satisfactory to both of you. And so all of that kind of negotiation and all of that toing and froing, they're not going to be willing to put in that time with you unless they didn't already see something in you. So you have to, first of all, before that, you have to know how to build the relationship, and you have to, that's where, as I said, my business development experience has been useful. And in fact, this is something that I want to actually teach investors. I wouldn't teach property, because I don't think that I'm really the best person to do that. But what I can do is I can teach people how to build relationships with anybody, and how to do it, how to get on their radar. And it's really about getting on the radar in the first instance, and then building it out from there, and making sure, you don't put a foot wrong, really. Or, in some instances, they are going to be the ones that put a foot wrong. And so you've also got to, it's a balance, isn't it? You've got to watch out for them putting the foot wrong, and actually, the that greed kind of coming up.
Thanks, Jane. It's interesting. Sarah, do you have some questions?
Yeah, hi Jane. Really, really interesting this morning. You do a hell of a lot of different things. If you could pinpoint one thing, what would it be that gets you up in the morning?
Well, I'm very, very passionate about my smart connected business, about the course that I'm going to launch, the Leader They Love. And really, I am a creator more than anything. So I love the process of creation and content creation and really ideas. I'm really
Is that your most dynamic profile? Are you a creator?
Yeah, I'm a star creator.
Yeah.
So therefore, you know, the relationship stuff is obviously the star, and the creator is yeah. I'm kind of a mixture of both. So, I have a lot of weaknesses, like everybody does, and I have to work with other people and create partnerships in order to should we say, manage those weaknesses, because none of us are good at everything, are we? So it is also a challenge for me, like it is with anybody that's in business, is finding the right people to work with, sustaining those relationships, making sure they're heading in the right direction, maintaining motivation, managing people really. So that is a part of it. But of course, in an ideal world, I think most of us would really love to be just left alone to do the things that we really like most. And if I look forward to, say, 5 years down the line, my life will consist of just ongoing creation until I die, just writing books and doing playing with ideas and I hope that answers the question.
Yes, definitely. Okay, so just one more question. If you were to start again, you had all the knowledge and experience that you've got, but you didn't have any money, where would you start? Like, what would be your strategy to start a new business or a new property business?
If I had no money, I would build relationships. So they say your network is your net worth. That is the only thing that I really know how to do really well anyway. That the rest of it just is just ideas and things. So I think that people can completely underestimate the power of a network and the power of other people. So I would literally probably just go out there and I would meet as many people as I possibly could. And if I had no money, obviously that would have to be for free. So I don't quite know how I would do that, but I would set myself that challenge of how can I put myself in that environment. And even if I had to get a job as a waiter or something, I don't really know. I would linger around at people's tables and I would talk to them about what it is that they do. And I'd say, you know what, that's really interesting. I love this because I'd love to do this too. And I think that's it really. I think it's just understanding that connection builds opportunity and never, ever, ever neglect the power of people. That would be the message.
Brilliant. Thank you.
You're welcome.
It's been absolutely brilliant. So if people want to find out more about you, what's the best way for them to actually connect with you?
Well, thank you for asking that question, Karen. I really appreciate that. I'm fairly prolific on social media, so LinkedIn is always a good way. I have the Smart Connector group on Facebook, so please, feel free to request to join the Facebook group or contact me personally via Messenger. I'm also on Instagram, Twitter, and not so much on those. So those are all good channels. Thank you.
That's brilliant. And thank you everyone for joining us. And this is the end of today's Coffee Kickstarter, and it's been brilliant as usual. Thank you everyone, and bye. See you next week. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye everybody.